Okay. So there we go. I would love to, let's just see here. Are we getting some introductions in the chat? Yeah, a few of you. Yeah, so if you want to keep working on that, and we'll just invite people in as they come. So let's see, is there anything else? So today we're going to have like the fireside chat. We have some kind of conversation that will happen with Janelle and Megan. And then we'll do some Q&A. If there's any questions that you have throughout, just put them in the chat, because we do want this to feel like a fireside chat. So let's open the discussion with kind of that get to know you for Janelle and Megan. So let's start with, why did you get into Web3? And we'll just tell us a little bit about us so that we can get to know both of you. So Janelle, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Thank you so much, Michelle. And I've said this to you before, but I'm saying it to you again in a recorded setting. You're an incredible advocate. So thank you so much for being a part of our Venusverse and Venusventures trip and journey. And it's been such a pleasure working with you and getting to know you. So thank you again for having us. My name is Janelle Shaluhi. I am CEO and founder of Venusventures, formerly Venusverse, which still exists, but we've evolved into Venusventures, and I'm happy to tell you a little bit more about that. But back to where we're from, I'm actually from Waterloo, Ontario, which is about an hour away from where Michelle is. And Waterloo happens to be the birthplace of Ethereum, for those of you who aren't aware. So Vitalik actually built it at the University of Waterloo, second year in. And so a lot of people don't know it's Canadian technology, and this is the birthplace. I'm living in it. So it's a very exciting time, obviously, for Canada and Web3. So as I mentioned, we started off as Venusverse, which is actually, it was, to the question is how we got into Web3. And I won't go into too deeply right now because I want Megan to make the introduction, and then we can get into it a little more detail. But essentially, we want to solve an immediate problem for women in Canada, especially around Web3. So a statistic that I had come across when I got into Web3, actually a year ago this month, was that 4% of women in Canada were in the crypto, NFT, and Web3 space, and 96% of men in Canada were in the crypto, NFT, and Web3 space. Now, obviously, there's a massive gap, and that's a big issue because having been in the tech industry for such a long time, having obviously worked a lot on D&I and the inclusion of women in tech, women in tech sales as well. You know, obviously, when I saw that statistic, it was very clear to me that we're going to end up in the same cycle that we have been in the last 20 years, the same problems that we've been trying to solve. And to me, Web3 was about, you know, obviously level setting, breaking old cycles, and building new things on better systems, more decentralized systems, more global systems. And so that's what really intrigued me about Web3. I saw this massive potential on a global scale for us to connect across the world, to do things together across the world. And obviously, you know, hopefully solve a lot of global problems that we're seeing today through Web3 or Web3 technology. And that's what Venusventures has evolved into. So within the last 3 months, we've now become Venusventures. It's always been a part of our roadmap by the fall. So we stuck on track that we would actually launch an incubator. So Venusventures is a digital incubator, which will be in the metaverse. We're already building in our metaverse. And the idea is that we want to make it accessible to everybody across Canada, especially, but across the globe as well. So typical incubators are confined by space. What we wanted to do was break that tradition and lower all the borders across Canada and across the world so that those individuals and organizations with the best intentions, you know, can come together and build the best things and monetize it. So I will stop there and turn it over to Megan, my awesome co-founder.
Thanks, Janelle. Yeah, it's Janelle's been doing some amazing things, which is how I was really attracted into Web3 through Venusverse. And so attending some educational sessions. I had recently pivoted into a role within the digital space in a post-secondary institution where I live, which is in Calgary, Alberta, traditional territories of Treaty 7, Blackfoot First Nation. And so starting to look at advanced technology and how do we bring this into the post-secondary space, which often likes to say that we are 5 years behind industry. I'd say we might even be further behind, but But really now we're trying to move ahead and look at what is happening in the technology space. So started to get interested in Web3 and the opportunity that it presents itself for women, and reinventing and thinking about organizations differently. What my background is in industrial organizational psychology, which is the psychology of people at work. And so I've spent all of my career and my academic studies within the space of how do you create a meaningful organization? How do you create a work that's filled with purpose? How do you lead people and teams effectively? And so I'm seeing all these things and working with organizations within a structure that it feels like we've kind of hit the max of what we can do within this structure of effective leadership and effective work. People, we're all experiencing the after effects of a global pandemic, and so we're trying to find ways to help people find better well-being. And I think that Web3 offers an opportunity to shift the conversation, shift the structure, and reimagine how we work, how we connect in our lives. So that's really what attracted me to Web3, and I'm learning so much from Janelle and from this community and Michelle.
Awesome. So all of us, I'm sure, get in that situation where people are wondering, what do you do? So if your family, you were with your family and you were going to describe what you do at Venusventures, what would you say to them? Megan, you want to start us off?
Yeah, well, I think my young children believe that I just, have conversations all day, which is kind of true. But a big part of what I do at Venusventures is really focusing on mindset shifts. So how are we bringing people together and exploring ways in which we can create a more balanced Web3 with diverse voices and diverse thinking. And so we've incorporated a social contract within Venusventures, and part of that is bringing people who share values around people first and trust and collaboration and co-creation, and then ongoing community engagement with those people. So learning together around Web3. So we meet every second Friday, and we share what we've learned in Web3, because we're all from completely different, diverse spaces, and then highlighting and spotlighting some of the organizations within Web3 so that we can grow and help each other together. So that's a key part of it's really just, I just really get to hang out with people all the time in Web3, talking about Web3. So that's how I might explain it to my children. It's maybe a bunch of online tea parties. My girls are very young. So
awesome. Welcome, Simon. Great to have you here. So Janelle, how about you? How would you describe Venusventures to your family?
So for me, it's actually probably a little bit easier. So I have an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old. My son is 11, my daughter's 8, and both of them are into gaming. So they both know the gaming world. They're into which obviously has been a test ground for the metaverse for a very long time. So they kind of get the whole metaverse thing, which is really cool. They get the whole avatar piece. They get interacting with others in the metaverse. They get the gamification. My daughter was just showing me how she's using VR on Roblox without actually a headset. So my kids are starting to be at the age where they're digitizing and moving into a very digital world. Obviously during COVID, that was accelerated. So my kids pretty much understand a little bit about what we're trying to do at Venusventures with regards to bringing the world together in a much more meaningful way. And so to Megan's point, what we want to do, obviously, Web3 is a whole mindset shift. If we think about all of our systems right now, they're pretty much legacy. If you think about our political systems, we don't talk about political systems being legacy, but almost every single political system on this planet is a legacy system that's been there for a very long time, that's been built a very old way, and we're still working that way. Financial systems are legacy, social systems are legacy. What Web3 offers, and I explain this to my children because we have these dialogues, is a chance to build something new and something better for all of us. And to Megan's point, our biggest focus is balance, so we come from a world where we're not saying, and we have a little bit of a different view on Web3, a lot of, especially within Canada, and I do have to preface that because we're prime for blockchain, in my personal opinion. We're prime for a lot of the things that Web3 can actually help with, because we do have transparent systems right now, more so than other countries, much more actually than other countries. So from a Canadian perspective, it's super important to start thinking about, how as Canadians, we can actually help Canada in a time like this. We just got off a call earlier today with hospitals in our region talking about, we obviously have an emergency room issue across Canada and Ontario. How can we help solve for that problem? How can we start using these technologies to solve for this problem? So what we're trying to do is bring balance. We're not trying to get rid of anybody. It's counterintuitive, in my personal opinion, in a world of inclusivity, which Web3 fosters, to start excluding others, including, by the way, banks and government, because our perspective is everybody has to be around the table, and we all have to be having these conversations and building for the right intentions and monetizing the right intentions. Everybody should be making money. Everybody should be, obviously their data, they're open to sell it. They can sell it however they want in the world of Web3. There's a lot of opportunities in Web3 to make money. So the whole idea is monetizing the right intentions, ensuring that the right people are going first and leading in Web3, because, and we want to back them, because it's the good actors. It's the good actors that are going to help shape the space. And there's a ton of bad actors in the early adopter stage, which is where we're at right now. What we're trying to do is vet that, a lot of that. We won't always hit, but we're going to try our best to do whatever we can to help build a better world.
Great. Thanks, Janelle. And I imagine some folks here, because I know I've been part of many debates about, different sectors and institutions and how we engage them or not. But we can get to that. And love that you're putting out your perspective and naming it. Okay, let's see here. So let's just maybe go a little deeper on Venusventures and its intent. And why is this such an interesting space from a women diversity perspective? And what enticed you to make a commitment to that I guess, vision? And I don't know, either of you can jump in.
Megan can probably jump in on this one.
Yeah.
I'll jump in after.
So I think, why don't I start with a story? Because I think that there's a story that really resonates for me. And it was also so part of what moved me into paying attention more to the Web3 space. But the story is actually a Greek myth. And so we'll see if you've heard it before. So this is a story about the princess of Troy, Cassandra. And she was the most beautiful princess of Troy. And all of the men in the village, all of the gods wanted to be with her. And so Apollo, one of the gods in this story, it's all Greek mythology, came to her and he said, Cassandra, I will give you a gift, and in exchange, I want to be with you. And so she said, well, okay, what's the gift? And so he said, well, I'm going to give you the gift to be able to see into the future, and you'll be able to see what happens to your family, your friends, your city, all things. And she said, well, that sounds like a really amazing gift. Okay, sure, I'll take the gift. So he bestowed the gift on her. And then when he came to collect the exchange of being with her, she decided she'd changed her mind. She didn't want to be with him. And as a result, he was infuriated. But apparently the gods could not take away any gifts that they had bestowed. And so instead he cursed her. And the curse that he put on her was that she would still be able to see into the future, but nobody would believe her. And I think when I tell this story, this resonates with a lot of women, of people who identify as women, and a lot of minorities, because often they have a perspective and a way of going about and navigating the world that is so valuable, but often are not heard, and their voices aren't heard. And so I believe that Web3 is an opportunity to rebalance and shift and create a space for other voices to be able to inform the space and inform what it is. How are we building this? This is so different than what we currently have today. And so what does it look like, and how do we build it? And on top of that, because of the technology available to decentralize, to allow us to create trust within the system, it actually reinforces a lot of those values that diverse groups and women bring to the table. And so I think this is a prime place where more naturally we can come in and feel like, oh, I can work this technology because I understand in my heart how to collaborate, or I really understand what it's like to co-create and nurture others with abundance. And so I think that this is where I see the value of Web3 for women and for other diverse groups, is that it's a space where we can start to inform a new way of doing things, as opposed to this game that we're playing in organizations today, which has been created just by one group. And we just need, back to Janelle saying around balance, we just need to find an opportunity to balance it. And unfortunately, I mean, I've worked a lot in large organizations that are very embedded in the ways that they do things and the way it's structured. And you can make little changes within these systems, but it's a game where, I mean, you can try to change the players, you can try to change some of the rules, but in the end, you're still playing in the same game. And so I love the opportunity that Web3 brings to create a whole new game in a space that can really start to, showcase some of the different approaches and ways of doing things that we all bring to the table. Janelle, you want to add on that?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in with another perspective too. Megan, you always hit the mark. So thank you for that perspective. And for me too, obviously similar to Megan, this isn't a world, I don't think we should be in a place right now in 2022 where we're having a conversation about whether or not women should be in Web3. To be completely honest with you, it shouldn't be optional at this point. We should be way past that, because approximately 50% of the global population is women. We're building a new world. So in a world that's centered around inclusivity, which obviously means women need to be at the table for a number of reasons. Number one, their perspective, because as we're building, we want to make sure we're building female and women-friendly environments, to be honest with you, because right now, as per Megan's statement, we don't really have that. These systems have not really been built for women in the past. And I think that's something that we all have to acknowledge. When, political systems, financial systems, social systems were built, I would say maybe few, if any, women were sitting at that table. So, now's a chance to do things differently and to be more inclusive on a global scale. The other thing about women in Web3 is, as women, and I'm just going to say it the way it is that, we tend to think for collectives. It's just how we are. It's just the way we're programmed, and not everyone, obviously, and I'm not trying to generalize, but women in, like, for the most part, tend to think of, like, when I'm building for a future, I'm thinking of my children, obviously, as I'm building for a better future. It's just, sorry.
Welcome, AMSA. Great to have you here.
Oop, was that a question or was there?
They were just joining in.
So okay, yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought I missed a question. So from my perspective, this world that we're moving into is a global movement. So we need more perspectives that involve, the broader globe, and we need people to be thinking of like everybody around the world as we're building. So that's a power. I think women, that's our superpower. We tend to think for collectives, and we can do it, and we do it well, and we shouldn't be apologetic for it. So I think, that from that perspective alone, we need more women at the table as we're building and thinking. And the other thing is, to Megan's point, it's really a matter of upskilling. So Web3 is just a daunting word right now, because a lot of people don't even know what that means, or what the technologies that underpin it means, or what is the art of the possible, or is it metaverse, or there's a lot of unknowns, so part of what we do actually at Venusventures is education, because that's where we need to start. We need to start with the education piece. And what we're trying to do is kind of embed the right education, education for building a better world, and how you should be thinking about this moving forward. So women are very, and we know this from our sessions that we had, one-on-one sessions, and the feedback that we've gotten, they're very intimidated by this world, thinking that it's extremely technical, but really what it is a matter of figuring out what you do today in Web 2 and how you can upskill into Web 3. How can you apply what you do today into Web 3 by a simple upskill? For example, a lot of the women that came through our sessions, which was 75 minutes, by the end of it, they had a very good idea as to how they can move into Web3, doing what they do now. But the other piece that we want to mention is now is a chance to obviously build things that you're passionate about, build things that you really want to do, you've always wanted to do, because Web3 allows for that. And it allows for you to build for yourself, but also to interact globally. So you can build something, but you can sell across the world, you know, wallet to wallet, and you don't have to go through any loopholes. You can transact directly. So we want to open this world to women so that they can understand how to, number one, you know, be entrepreneurial in this new world that we're entering into. They should be part of the early adopter phase. Why not? You know, like I said, we're approximately 50% of the global population. We need to be at the table. It shouldn't even be, should women be here or not? It's how many women are coming into the space, how many men are coming into the space, is there balance? That's what we should be looking for more moving into Web3 than we have been looking for in Web2, to be completely honest, which isn't a world that has been built for women primarily. And I can say that with conviction. I've been in the tech industry for a very long time. And, you know, a part of our mission was to ensure that we have the balance in the tech industry. And we've been trying to solve for this problem over 20 years. We still haven't even cracked that nut yet when it comes to D&I and tech. And that's why, you know, this is a chance to reset and do things differently and build the right systems, including all the right people. So that's my perspective.
So good. And I just want to pick up too on what you were saying, Janelle, about bringing women into the space and having those conversations. And I had the experience of being part of that group. And it was a small group of women. We learned together for 75 minutes on a topic that was very unfamiliar to most people in the room. And I have to say that it felt different. It felt safer as a way to explore a topic that I didn't understand. And particularly because I had been trying to learn it in other spaces. So through Twitter and, you know, looking through the different DAOs and trying to find ways to understand what exactly is Web3, what are the components related to Web3. And I felt like it was a huge chasm, and trying to cross that chasm because there's a lot of technical language. And there's a lot of terminology. And I've heard people say before, you know, well, you just have to, it's like speaking a new language. You just have to get into it and you have to continue to learn it. And I think that is also something we need to rethink. It's a bit of an orthodoxy to assume that you have to know a new language in order to get into Web3. Because I think we have applied that type of mindset to a lot of education. It's sort of this colonization or colonialism related to education, which we see just in formal education, where it should be hard to understand because then only the people who have enough knowledge can understand it, which I think should not be the case at all. And so if there's things that you know about Web3, you know, how do you simplify it in a way that welcomes other people? Because we can always explain something in a way where anybody can understand. And I think, I mean, that was the beauty of sort of Janelle's example about connecting it to her kids. Her 8-year-old gets it. And so I think that there is other ways we can think about education in Web3. We can think about how we talk about Web3, how we communicate with others, with our friends, our families, that make it easier to understand and to lessen that chasm so that we can all be part of it. And that's what really attracted me. I'm not a technical mind. I am interested in this space, and I do see just how exciting the possibilities are. And that's how I like to talk about it when I speak with my friends about Web3. It's that you don't need to know all these technical terms. And I'd like to see a shift in how we talk about Web3. But of course, we had the early adopters are the ones who've always built this space, which is reflected in how people are onboarded in this space. And I think we have an opportunity to change that.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you kind of started to delve into this, but I'm curious if Janelle or Megan, and then I know there's lots of folks on this call that Web3 is something you've been in for a while. And then I know there's folks where this is brand new. So, you know, if you're chatting to somebody about Web3, you know, what are the elements that make up Web3? Janelle, you were kind of getting into your perspective on that, but do you want to go a bit deeper? Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, Web3 is an umbrella term. And by the way, I do want to preface, and I have mentioned this before, but it is also, you know, built upon Ethereum, which has been built at the University of Waterloo, so technically Canadian technology. But the part of Web3 that hasn't been, that isn't associated with Ethereum is obviously the metaverse. So if you think about it, for me, Web3 is the overarching umbrella as to what this new iteration of the web is. So this is really Web 1 was intended to be this way. It was supposed to be decentralized, open source for everybody to access. Web 2 came in and kind of centralized things and, started, taking our data and using our data and leveraging our data. And I'm not just talking about social platforms. We talk about it as social platforms, Facebook, and it's just not just social platforms. It's all central entities. So obviously including banks, including government, all the central entities. And then Web 3 is again back to a decentralized model where we can interact globally, powered by cryptocurrency. So obviously it's a digital world powered by cryptocurrency and allows for interaction on a global scale, wallet to wallet. And I can give you perfect examples of that. So within our incubator, for example, we have companies from the UK, from Lebanon, from Dubai that are now starting to be a part of our community. And engaging a company in Lebanon, for those of you who don't know, obviously they're considered a failed state now. Unfortunately, the central entities, especially the bank, has been a part of that failed state. So what they're doing now is building around Web 3. And so one of the things I did, so in the past, if I had to do any business with Lebanon, I'm ethnically Lebanese, by the way, born Canadian, but ethnically Lebanese. So if I had to do any business, I would have to go to a bank, do a wire transfer, go to Western Union, do a wire transfer. In this case, all I had to do was wallet to wallet, crypto transfer. It was in their wallet. They send an invoice and boom, we were done. And we started working together. So obviously powered by crypto, which is incredibly important. But then as a part of it, there's also DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, which to me, as many of you know on this call that are in DAOs, to me, it's a workplace of the future. It's going to be how we're going to be interacting. Everything of the future, in my personal opinion, will be kind of built like a DAO where you have stakeholders that are involved, where you're making decisions by voting, where you're engaging. So there's crypto, there's DAO, then there's obviously there's a lot more, but the metaverse piece, metaverse has been around for 30 years or so, right? It's not a new technology, but what it's now become is a digital space where we can interact and allow for experiences on a global scale. We just have to make sure all the right experiences and all the right things are being built in that metaverse and that we're watching it, especially for our children, of course, So to me, that's where government comes in my personal opinion, is where we keep out the bad actors, is the regulation piece, right? So there's a little bit of that in there. So crypto, DAO, the metaverse. What else did I miss? Crypto, DAO, the metaverse. There's a few other things in there.
You want to speak to NFTs?
Oh, NFTs. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, non-fungible tokens. What started off as art has now become the art of the possible. And I've actually been talking a lot about how NFTs is an incredible technology. It's not just obviously art. It started off as art similar to all previous historic revolutions or movements, all started with art, but now it's become the art of the possible with technologies where you're going to be able to issue plane tickets as NFTs, membership cards as NFTs, concert tickets as NFTs, really anything that is a digital card. If you think about it, health cards, digital ID, all of those, x-rays, medical records, all of those will be issued as NFTs down the road. Then there's obviously the underpinning of blockchain technology, which is the essence, which is what all of this has been built on. And blockchain technology obviously is very decentralized, and it allows for, a decentralized ledger, which essentially, if you think about it, is essentially an accounting system, a very transparent accounting system that's automated. And then there's the AI piece, which also, by the way, is Canadian technology. We don't talk about that either, but AI is Canadian technology. And a lot of this has been underpinned. A lot of the interactions within the smart contracts, NFTs and smart contracts are one, but a lot of the interactions within the smart contracts are going to be done by code and AI. So obviously there's that piece as well. So I think I mentioned DAOs, non-fungible tokens, cryptocurrency, metaverse. Did I forget anything? I think that's all. That's
Others
it.
Want to jump in? Anything else you would add that you feel is important?
Oh, and blockchain I mentioned. Yep.
Yes, you mentioned blockchain for sure. Anything else? All of our Web3 enthusiasts.
And we're just new to all of this, of course. So this is how we define Web3 right now, but all these technologies are iterating. I mean, I know we talk about NFTs, but there's also the soul-bound tokens that we, as a form of NFTs, but those are tokens that actually will not be able to leave your wallet. So if you think about digital ID, if you think about passports, if you think about, those type of things, the Canadian government, for example, health cards, If you issue it as a soul-bound NFT, those actually as an ID card will stay in your wallet. You can't transfer that anywhere else. So that's where technology is evolving. And I've even heard now that they've even evolved it past soul-bound tokens and are evolving it to even accommodate for digital ID even further. So we're still in a very nascent stage. A lot still has not been discovered, but that's what's beautiful about this. There's so much we can do. And I think the key is to start figuring it out and start building. And that's what we're trying to do in the incubator. We're trying to encourage everybody to start thinking and building as opposed to talking about it, because there's a lot of talk about where this can go. Very few people are actually in building, probably 1% of the world. I don't know exactly the number, but very few. So that's what we're trying to encourage people to do. Start building and start experimenting in a safe space and start building the right things. So that's kind of our vision of Web3. Those are our definitions of so far of Web3, but those are all going to change very quickly.
One of the sessions that Nate and some others and I have been hosting as part of this CCSN semester is about Web3 and systems transformation, because we know that, you know, many of us are getting into the space hoping for better futures, and actually, you know, even in some ways flipping some of the NTD thinking and, you know, holding either creating anew of what is existing in institutions, or hopefully encouraging big shifts. And then, like, how can we look at some of the big issues that we have at that intersection of, you know, all the different things that are happening. So I guess maybe, Megan, I'll start with you, but what do you think are the characteristics needed to create a better version of the Web3? And I know for you, you've spent a lot of time thinking about leadership, but go wherever it makes sense for you to go. And then just prompting for folks, we're going to shift. I'm going to ask if you have any questions or comments so that, you know, we get into a conversation with all of you. So if you want to key up any questions in the chat or share, we'll come to you shortly. So Megan, do you want to kick us off with how are we going to create a better version of the web, and what are the characteristics?
What do we need to bring to that space? Well, I think I mean a big part of it is what we had talked about earlier with the social contract and really values based. So thinking about how do we create systems where people are at the center first. And what I love, you know, hearing Janelle talk about all the things that are Web3, I just had this visual in my mind. It's like puzzle pieces, and they're decentralized. There's all little bits and pieces, and instead of forcing ourselves to put the puzzle together, how do you find new places to bring that piece and plot and, you know, connect it in? And so some of this thinking around abundance and how, you know, oftentimes everything that we value, or a lot of the things we value, are scarce, right? You know, 20 free t-shirts, and we all really want the t-shirt, even though we don't actually need another t-shirt. But this idea of scarcity is kind of built in, that this is important, or that it creates a level of value. And so how do we shift that limiting belief and start thinking about abundance and thinking about, you know, these puzzle pieces can be placed into all different ways and created and set up in completely different visuals or viewing, depending on how you put it together. So there's a level of abundance, I think, is a characteristic or a mindset that needs to come in to Web3, and how we can all work together. It doesn't have to be in competition with one another. We can co-create together. And that's a quality which Janelle had talked about earlier, that women tend to bring to the table more often from a nurturing lens. I would say too, around balance and this idea of balancing paradox. And so there's a lot of things where I think we value in our culture decision making and having a right answer or a right thing that we should be doing. And I think that hasn't really served us well. There's a term in psychology, it's a bias called the Forer effect. And it's named after a psychologist back in the 40s who had done an experiment. His name was Bertram Forer. And he had done an experiment with students where he had given them a fake psychology test. And in the psychology test, they were questions that were like, you know, sometimes I feel extroverted and I want to be around people, but other times I feel introverted and I want to just, you know, be by myself. And so he gave them this fake test. And then he printed off profiles and he gave it to each one of his students. Each one got their profile. And he asked them to read the profile and grade on a scale of 1 to 5 whether or not that profile described them. And on average, it was a 4.3 out of 5, and 5 being it describes me perfectly. And then what he revealed was that he'd given every single student the exact same profile. And he concluded this effect, or this sort of this desire of humans to want to relate to vague statements about ourselves. So this idea of extroversion, introversion. It's a very human thing to do that. But ironically, instead of looking at that and going, wow, this is just something we want to do. We want to be able to find patterns in things. We want to be able to look at a continuum and relate across it. Instead of doing that, we started to focus on, well, actually, it looks silly, or someone is vulnerable, or I'm missing the word here, but it was viewed as kind of like, if you can't choose a side, then you're not a good decision maker. And we started to go the other way and value decision making in our culture, where it had to be one or the other. And that's, we expect that of a lot of leaders in our organizations, of executives. We teach that in leadership programs. And I would have to say that this is a mindset we need to unlearn. We need to start thinking about, how do we look at Web3 in this space where there's all this opportunity and this continuum of things that can be applied in so many different ways? And how can we start to question our initial thinking, some of these limiting beliefs, these orthodoxies, these things that we take for granted, and go, what are the other alternatives? And maybe not settle on just one. So I think there's this abundance thinking, this co-creation, collaboration, people first. There's a whole lot of characteristics. I could probably talk for hours, but I want to, sort of bring Janelle into the conversation too, and get your sense of what are some of the most important characteristics.
And maybe, Janelle, as you're doing that, if you want to tie in Nate's question a bit about the process of founding a Web3 venture studio with a strong mission, challenges, unexpected positive surprises, as you kind of reveal those characteristics.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you for the question, Nate. Love that. So to Megan's point, first and foremost, absolutely, what we're trying to do is build trust. So if we look at the state of the world today, look at us as a planet, look at, everything that's happening, from war to global recession to you name it. We're kind of not outperforming ourselves as a planet. We're not killing it as a human race. Let's just put it out there. We can do much better. Unfortunately, right now, we're just not in a place, and the whole world is in this place, where there's a lack of trust. A lot of people have lost trust in almost every system, and I think what Web3 is centered around is trust. The whole idea, we call it trustless, which is counterintuitive, but it's centered around trust. We have to build a world of trust. And so for me, that's where it starts. That's where it needs to start. And that's where I think we're trying to build, obviously, within our community. So as a part of our community at Venusventures, to answer some of Nate's questions, we're doing it a little bit differently. So we didn't do the whole Discord thing. We didn't do the whole, we definitely didn't launch through Discord. We didn't do the whole, hype before the launch of our NFTs. What we're trying to do is actually, choose our community, in the sense that we want to make sure all the good actors, there are as many good actors as possible, obviously. And we want to make sure everyone who's building with the right intentions is coming into this space. So what we're trying, we don't have anyone who's undoxed in the community. And what that means is you haven't disclosed who you are. So within Web3, there's a lot of people who have not doxed. And what that means is they're you don't know who their identity is, which is also very difficult when you're trying to build trust, by the way. So that's another thing that I think we need to break past. But, we want to make sure that the right people are coming into the incubator and doing the right things. And so part of it is being able to interview people one-on-one. So we're actually talking to them about, what are you building? What are your intentions? How is your technology going to advance Web3? So there's a lot of that. And to Megan's point, kind of deconstructing the ways that we've been doing things previously. Because, it is, again, an innovation stage. So a lot of what we need to do is experiment. So breaking down the cycles and the ways that we've been taught to do things in the past is super important to moving into a trustful environment, and I think that is a big thing. We have to build trust. We have to kind of not abandon, and I don't believe in abandoning the way we do things. I think there's a lot of learnings in the way we've done things in the past. And that's how we identify big problems, but we do have to change the way we're thinking and doing and working in this new world that we're moving into. We have to start thinking about it very differently. And to my first point, inclusivity. And so this is where I have a little bit of a different opinion. So if you think about a bank, I'm just going to put this out there, and maybe this is some food for thought. If you think about one of our Canadian banks, okay, if you think about the elderly demographic as well, to me, my personal opinion is the elderly demographic is not going to go into the space of Web3 without the help of their trusted bank. It's too daunting. There's a lot of technology behind it. And you know what, quite honestly, they also deserve, the elderly demographic deserve the opportunity to diversify if they want to. They deserve the opportunity to be included in this new world. So we want to make sure that they're supported and they're given the right opportunities to move into this space. So that's where a bank can come in. They can actually help the elderly demographic come into this space. There is a role for everybody, in my personal opinion. Same with government. Government comes in with the regulation part, so part of what we're doing in the incubator is actually building. We're starting to launch projects. So to Nate's question, we're launching projects around a museum, around hospitals. So we're starting to do these things. But the whole idea is we want to make sure that everybody's included in this space, but we also want to make sure that we're trying to build the right things so that when the time does come for government to start thinking about regulation, and we're starting to move because we're also doing a lot of work with MPs and others too, to raise awareness around Web3 in Canada. But when government is ready, what we ideally want to do is hand over frameworks of, what we think policy should be based on these projects that we're working on. Since we're already working on these projects, we might as well start thinking about policy and frameworks and then handing it over so that we don't have to start from ground zero. We all have a role to play. And to me, it's not up to government to come up with it. It's not up to the banks. It's not up to each of us. I think we all have to come together and figure it out together. And that's the role for Canada to play as a whole. And you know what, we should be thinking about this globally across the world. Everybody, in my personal opinion, has a role in Web3. It's an inclusive space. It's counterintuitive to start off as exclusive, in my personal opinion. So that's the other piece I would like to put out there. That's a little bit different than probably what you've heard in the past.
Yeah. And what I love, because Janelle, you and I have been in some spaces and I've seen your Twitter, like I'm in a different place about government regulations. And just the one piece I wanted to pick up on where I've really been pushed a little bit to rethink about pseudonyms and anonymity is in the space of equity, how some of the folks in DAOs I've been in have tried to say, well, we need you to come on video. And then we have people in the space who have really talked about the oppression that they faced, and that one of the beauties of Web3 is it's creating a safer and brave space for them to show up into. And that what I found really cool is like the kind of relationships that I've been able to build with people that I've actually never seen or met. And I've always had this, like, I need to be in person or I need to, and so it's just kind of like shifted the way that I've kind of, so I'm just, throwing out kind of some of I know this space is about kind of figuring out each of our own perspectives on this, and that, we're all coming to this from different learning experiences.
Yeah. And you know what, Michelle, I would love us to be in a place where we can show up as who we are and feel just as comfortable and feel just as welcome and just as inclusive. Because to be honest with you, from a perspective as a business, there's 3/4 of people that I interact with through Twitter and through Web3 that I probably won't work with because I don't really know who they are. And I say this about NFT projects too. If you don't know who the founders are, just, take a second guess. Don't necessarily jump in. You always need to know, in my personal opinion, who's behind it, because there's been plenty of stories where eventually founders are undoxed and they're either not who they say they are, or they have some sort of history or something to that effect. If we're trying to build a trustful world, we should be able to show up as our authentic selves and be ourselves. And I know there's a lot of work that needs to happen to get us there. But my personal opinion is if we can build a safe space, which is what we're doing in our community, everyone shows up on video every 2 weeks and we all talk and we all chat and we're all talking about how to build a better world. It's part of the requirement. It's an inclusive space. And that's what we're trying to provide, is that basically that safe space for people to show up as themselves, talk openly, and help solve for real world problems. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to see moving forward.
And I think having that, can I just add, because I think Inoki, is that how you say your name? Inoki had a question in here. Sorry?
Njoki.
You had a question in here around equity, which is really, to me, about providing equal access. And I think when you have people who are anonymous, you can't really know, and you can't be intentional about making sure that there is equal access. And if it's not there, then seeking it out and being able to go and intentionally finding people and bringing them in. Because I think if we don't do that, then we're going to create, I mean, Janelle and I are two white women. We're going to create an environment that feels safe and comfortable for us, but that might not be the environment that's safe and comfortable for others. And to Janelle's point earlier, how do we start to build a space where people feel comfortable? And it may not be a space where we're on video on Zoom. It may look totally different. But it's still a space where people feel like they can come as their authentic self, and contribute to creating a system that feels comfortable. Because I think right now we're trying to build a different type of world on old platforms that have been created for an old world. And so it's of course going to have an impact on how we show up and what we do. And I mean, there's a lot of research around how diverse groups find it difficult to engage on Zoom, or don't feel included on Zoom, and that it's better when they can turn their cameras off. So I think there's this, we're walking this really interesting line between where we are today and how the world has been created today, and where we want to go, and being, sort of this middle ground of like having to use the tools that have been created with a totally different mindset to be able to inform new tools. And so I think it's important we're constantly questioning and thinking about how might this be different.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I'm gonna see, who would like to jump in with a question? Let me just see. Njoki, I know you had how to enhance equity in an anonymous space. I would love for us to host a session about that, because I said, but let's open up the floor to any of you. What comments, questions do you want to bring into the space that you might, beyond the chat? Anything?
I saw, while people are thinking, I did see that G had talked about how do you navigate or filter the information overload in Web3, given so many things coming up. And then there was another question from Nate around what have been your biggest challenges. And I think that those two relate, because from my side, like what I would see is that because there's so much opportunity, it's sometimes hard to figure out where to focus. And I know at Venusventures, we've also experienced that there's so many ideas and so many opportunity to build. Where do you focus? And I think I would suggest that it comes back to the relationships you're building, and who are the people that you want to spend time with, based on what they believe in, their values. And I think that's where you can make amazing, beautiful things happen. And so a lot of where we've ended up focusing our time at Venusventures have been the people who have shown up, and they have committed to it, and they've said, yes, let's meet and talk about this. And then they've shown some level of follow-up, and they've been willing to have ongoing conversations and work together, and reach out for funding and grant funding, right? All those things that make it happen. And so I think part of it is like, what are you excited about? And who are the people you want to surround yourself with? Because in the end, we're co-creating together as people. And if you're showing up and you're working together, then I think you're kind of be able to carve out a path in the many opportunities.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, actually, to Megan's point, I totally agree. And I get this question all the time. There's just so much. And yes, there will be even more, because as we're starting to innovate, a lot more is going to start coming at us. We're just in the beginning stages. So this is not even all of it. So what I always recommend is pick your path. Figure out what it is you're passionate about, what it is you love, what it is you want to learn about, and basically hone in on that piece and learn more about that piece in particular and what motivates you and drives you, because there just is so much coming at you. But if you were early enough that if you actually hone in, and to Megan's point, focus on the area that you really want to learn more about, you actually have the ability to, become eventually or soon enough, one of the experts in the space once you start to hone in a little bit more on the things that you love, and that drives you and that makes you passionate. Because again, this is in many ways can be seen as a great reset where you can actually activate. We've been doing things the way we've been doing things right now because we've had to. This is how we've learned how to do things. The unlearning process, obviously, is to tap into the things that you love and that you want to do and that motivates you. And how do you activate that in a world of Web3? where basically the world literally is your oyster. So that is the one piece of advice that I would give is yes, there's so much. It's good to stay on top of everything, but hone in as much as you can on the areas that motivate you, whether it's DAO, blockchain, metaverse, and try to, you know, pick some focus areas. So that's one thing I would definitely say. Sorry, Megan, go ahead.
No, I just was good. It reminds me of something one of my mentors talks about, which is this: we're in this innovation of things and innovation of ways. And so the things is all the technology and all of the, you know, tools and processes that we're innovating. Those are the things. And I think for a long time we have focused on the things, but the ways are equally as important, which is the mindsets and the ways in which we come together and we create and we, you know, we build culture and we interact to inform how we use the things. And so I think that we've spent a lot of time putting the innovation of things first at the expense of ways. And so this is where now we're in this space of, you know, the social media dilemma and how we're preying on a lot of human vulnerabilities in social media. And the same will happen with Web3 if we don't prioritize and start moving forward with how do we do things? What are the ways in which we want to connect and collaborate? So this is where I think, you know, coming back to balance the two things, find out what are the ways, what is the mindset, what is the things that the technology that's going to support those mindsets for you and all that unique voice that you have to bring to the table, and how can you inform it and bring it to the table in a way that reflects your own values and your experiences to create a better world.
If I can just add one more thing, and I think this is probably one of the most comforting things that I can say that I have said to women in the past, is that we're all learning, right? This is a very new space. No one's got it all figured out. There's so much technology that's going to be evolving. We're all learning. And I think that is what we have to keep at the center. Like, no one here is really truly an expert in any one thing, maybe a small subset, because everything is evolving so quickly. So, you know, as things are evolving, you're learning new things. So even the experts are always learning. Everyone is learning in this space. And I think, you know, a big part of learning is actually doing, like innovating. And that's what we're trying to encourage too, right? Getting in there and learning. And I just want to answer one of the challenges to the question Nate had about challenges. To be honest with you, we're so focused on just doing right now. I don't know that we've been as focused on as many challenges, but the biggest challenge is obviously the education piece, because there is a massive gap as to what is Web3. And so that's where we spend a lot of our time actually, is to educate. And like I said, bring the right kind of education, just letting people know what is Web3, you know, what is the art of the possible? What are the technologies that are underpinning AR, VR? What is the possibility with that? What does a metaverse do? How can it globalize? All those things, I think, it has been a challenge only because a lot of people aren't fully aware of what this is yet. And so I don't see it as much of a challenge as it is an opportunity, because obviously we want to get in there and hopefully help to teach the right things. So that would be one. The other piece I would say, the positive surprises is how receptive everybody has been in the community to talk about what they're doing and to actually form like a real life community that we're all a part of. And again, nothing against some of the other applications, but it's not like we're on, you know, Discord chatting. We're actually meeting in person. We're trying to help each other evolve. We're actually trying to help get these companies in front of the right people. We're matching. So a big part of what we do in the incubator is connectivity. We're trying to connect people, the right people with the right things and to help monetize the right intentions. So there's a big connection piece and a big community piece. So that to me is, you know, honestly, where we need to be focusing a lot more on making sure that there's a safe space for everybody to get involved and to be engaged.
Thank you. I also wanted to, kind of comment soft molding you had shared with G and all of us about, you know, just kind of mirroring what we heard from Megan and Janelle about finding people that resonate with your interests, and then how do we collaborate through the learning process and distribute the knowledge, and just that trial and error that we have in that moment. So thank you. Well, we have 1 minute left, so I think we do need to wrap this up, but I want to say a huge thanks to everybody who came to join us. We do have a full week ahead of us. So tomorrow with the semester, we have Web3 and systems transformation. So that's the last session out of 4, but if you haven't been at any, no problem. And then we also have blockchain literacies this week, ethics in crypto. We have one on sector transformation through a DAO, which is doing a deep dive into Kraus House as an example of transformation. And then Kevin Owaki, that you might have heard of with Green Pilled, is going to be doing a fireside chat on Friday. And am I missing anything off the top of my head here? Nate, anything else that comes to mind?
Don't think so. I think you got it
Okay.
all.
Okay. So thank you all for being here. I hope that we can stay connected in some way. Huge kudos to Janelle and Megan for what you're creating, the conversations that you're creating around women in Web3. And if you want to drop anything in the chat, I did put Venusventures in here, but anyway, for people to find you, that is great. And I can stay on for a couple more minutes if anybody has any final questions or thoughts. Cool.
And thank you, Michelle. Appreciate you pulling this together, and it was a lot of fun.
Okay.
Michelle, thank you so much again. And thank you all for being here with us today and spending your lunch, or I don't know where everyone's calling in from, but thank you for spending your time with us today. We really appreciate it. And wishing everybody an incredible holiday.
And Janelle, what's
peace.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the best way for people to find you? Is it LinkedIn?
Yes, I was just pulling up my LinkedIn. I will be doing that one
Beautiful.
second, but definitely our website. Please be patient with us as we're building. We still have a newsletter we have to push out. That's kind of taken a back burner this month, but we will be getting that out too. So please do subscribe on our website if you're interested in getting our newsletter.
Okay, great. Well, have a wonderful rest of the day, and yeah, holiday season as it comes upon us, and we'll see what some of our other opportunities. And yeah, if you follow that unsemester link that I had put in earlier, you can connect up with us about the other sessions that are coming up, and just connecting in with crypto culture and society in general. So there you go. There it is again. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye
you all.
for
I'm just going
now.
to pop in my LinkedIn right here too.
Okay,
Sorry, it's taking me a
perfect.
second. It was in another tab. There we go.
Okay, awesome.
Thank
Great.
you, everyone. Michelle,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much again.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.